Joining us on the show tonight is Abhishek Jain, partner and national head, Indirect Tax, KPMG in India. Abhishek, good evening. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us this evening on India Tonight. Let me begin with the fact that how are you looking at the GST rate rationalization influencing, let's talk about the consumer demand across key sectors. In fact, to what extent can lowering the top slab and scrapping 28% directly translate into higher consumption?
Yeah. So I think good evening. Overall, it's a very good move, especially in the context of the current times where, because of the US tariffs and all, there is a bit of a stress on certain sectors and overall on the economy. This lowering of rate, which is quite significant, which is 12 to 5%, as the government is saying, 99% of the goods would move from the 12 to 5% rate, and about 90% will move from 28 to 18%. It's a significant GST reduction, should reduce significantly the price of these goods, and which will definitely boost consumption. Uh, and in case of cars, like small cars, it's even higher than 10% because the small cars are at 29% and 31%, including of cess. If they all come to about 18%, then it's a reduction even more than 10%. So definitely it will give a boost. People are worried about the slowdown in consumption, at least for the consumer durables, which are higher value goods in the meantime till the rates come down. But we heard one of the persons on the talk show, he says the consumption is still happening, which is then even better news.
Right, Abhishek. In fact, as you talk about a consumption boost, a potential consumption boost, I want to understand from you, how do you expect this, sort of easing and simplification of the tax structure to also reflect in the company's bottom lines? And eventually, will these benefits be passed on to consumers, and will they get, decreased prices? Will we see price cuts from certain consumer categories in the coming few months?
I think definitely, because this reduction, which is quite significant, it's not a 1 or 2 percentage point reduction, it's a significant reduction. Also, there are broadly anti-profiteering provisions, and the government may sort of bring them back in some form and shape. And the competitive pricing pressure, it's not a monopoly in most of these sectors. The competitive marketing pressures would definitely result in bringing the prices down for most of these goods.
Abhishek, what I would want to understand from you is that when you look at this situation, which categories of goods or services are most likely to see demand revival if the new slab structure is adopted?
So I would say consumer durables, automobiles, where the value is high and there is a significant reduction. Also sectors like cement, these certainly would see the consumption boost and a demand revival happening. On the goods which are more at the 12% rate, these are largely, say, some textiles, footwear, food products and all. Again, the consumption may go up because, again, there would be a 7% reduction. But the only point of concern, at least in the 12% category, is that many of these industries, the input tax credit is higher than 5%. It could, I mean, again, it could vary from sector to sector and for different companies, but it could be as high as about 8 to 10%. Now, and the government did state in the press release that they are looking at rationalizing the input tax accumulation as well as part of this exercise. So if the government does something about it, that will be really good, because when the goods come down from a 12% to 5% rate category, most of the input services that they procure, it could be advertising, brand royalty, the rental cost for retailers and all that costs, GST cost is still at 18%, which is the input services. Now, if that doesn't change and the government doesn't give refund of that credit, and the overall credit is higher than 5%, say it's about 8 to 10%, and then if these companies are stuck with a higher credit than what the output is, without an commensurate refund of those input credits, then the reduction in prices that we are expecting, which is say from 12 to 5%, a 7% reduction, may not happen, at least for the 12% category goods. This inverted duty problem may not be there as much for 28% category goods coming to 18%, because they can still largely absorb the credit. But the 12% to 5%, that's one area of concern that most industry players have. And they're definitely looking forward to the government to provide some relief on that count as well, so that they can then pass on the entire benefit
Right.
of 7% to the consumers.
Right, Abhishek, and we'll have to see whether more clarity comes in on that